I was waiting for you to do like a rap. I was waiting for you to do like an intro. I was like, Mike's gonna bust into song, I can feel it.
Welcome to America's Birthday, where we see the peace dealer rapping out. I wanted to make that as cringy as possible, like the solar return. Right
Oh
here.
man, guys. Well, happy birthday to America. This is like one of those situations.
Hermes and Hades on the ones and twos.
I know we talked recently. I mean, I was looking at it. I was like, didn't we just talk about America's chart? We did, but we kind of went up until about this point, and we didn't get too much into like the solar return. So we might talk a little bit about America's transits in honor of America's birthday. I kept looking at this, and all I kept hearing was like the roof is on fire. Like not in a good way, where everybody's like partying, kind of like shit's hitting the fan because Pluto's going retrograde, and we're gonna have like the retrograde second phase of the Pluto return happening. So things get heated, very much so, obviously, like in Cancer season.
Yeah. Like a boiling pot of water.
Yeah. So we might look at this. We might, I don't know if we have Biden's chart. We might pull up Biden's chart and look at that as well.
The best president ever.
Did you see the video of him falling off his bike recently?
Because former President Trump had hit his golf club and the ball hit him.
Did you see what Joe Rogan just put out an episode recently? We're filming this way before you guys see it, but it was something about being like, oh, let's review the footage of like Biden falling off the bike. You didn't see that? I don't know. I still need to see what it is, but like people are basically looking at the footage being like, But I mean,
like what?
Like maybe it was staged to make people feel bad for him.
Okay, because like I don't know why I felt like for a split second it could have been that, and then I was like, nah, he fell. His ass fell.
Maybe he did, but I mean, it's just, I don't know. I mean, I could see both sides of it. I guess he was kind of getting like bum rushed by a bunch of people that were like around him, and obviously you have like this like crypt keeper of a man that's riding this bicycle, so he gets bum rushed and he like falls. But I mean, yeah, I mean, it's not paying off to be a 12th house Scorpio right now.
No.
Let me just put it that way. Those eclipses are no joke.
They're coming for it. Almost felt like a spirit just like boom pushed him down. The spirit of America.
When you say that, I think of like a bald eagle coming out of nowhere and just fucking taking his ass out.
It looked like a vengeful spirit too. Like he got like sidelined out of nowhere. I don't know.
So let's like do a brief recap. Let's just kind of talk briefly, kind of go through the mental memories of where we've been since last year. So we've rapped a lot about like Virgo season last year being like this real emphasis in like truth and facts coming out, and us starting to kind of question the narrative of a lot of things that have happened. The U.S. started to feel its Pluto return that really got quite heated in the December through February period because we saw Pluto move, a Venus retrograde, a Mercury retrograde. Obviously, lots coming out from like the Fed last year in regards to like interest rates and concerns about what's going on economically, and just like a lot of things that have not panned out so well. I think we start to really kind of see like the markets tank and stuff since about fall of 2021. New Year kicks off with all those retrogrades, and yeah, I mean, it's just, I feel like this is like a really bad reality show that's just not, like, it's just getting worse. Like, I don't say this to be like Debbie Downer, but at least when Trump was around, like, shit was interesting, right? There was controversy.
Every episode.
Right. There was like a plot twist, you know?
And an actual plot.
So since the new year, now that we're sitting in June, when you're watching this July, it's been 6 months. What has happened over the last 6 months?
we've seen Obama make history by pioneering his third term. And
I think it's so funny that you think that.
oh yeah, no,
I think it's so funny.
This. Anyone who knows this. It's history being made. This is the first black president to have 3 terms.
I think he got out when he knew it was time to get out. He was like, all right, peace, I'm gonna let Trump take the fall for everything. He knew he had a strong exit strategy.
Well, no, I mean they were sure Hillary was gonna win, but yeah, he did think like that. I can see that too, so, contingency plan.
Early January, obviously, of last year, we saw the Capitol riots and all that shit that was happening.
Comical.
And now we're seeing this political theater that's going on where they've literally hired primetime TV producers and stuff to film all of these legal hearings relating to Trump and his family being, put on the stand and talking about what's been going on and trying to kind of drum up something I feel, and I'm trying to be neutral, but giving the Democrats a reason to get people worked up enough to be oh yeah, I'm still a Democrat. I mean, I'm neutral. I don't care anymore. I'm not on one side or the other, but it seems like a desperate attempt going into what is going to soon be, midterm elections. We've heard a lot of stuff about...
So those haven't... Oh, November.
November, yeah, well, on the eclipse. We've heard a lot of stuff about voters fraud, finding out that in multiple states it's been verified that, those machines don't fucking work. A lot of the things that people have been concerned about in terms of voting for one candidate and it coming up as another, and having our voting system very much in a place of easily being sabotaged. Monkeypox tried to be a thing. I feel it's still
just like murder hornets did. Remember when that
was in the news for 2 days though.
Yeah, true.
But I mean the pox thing, it's weird because I feel it's kind of on. We're kind of
doesn't know if it wants to
in
be
and out. They don't know. They had to put it on hold because of Pride Month.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
But now they're oh well, COVID's still hanging around, and I'm trying to think, is there anything else really prominent going on? I mean, I heard that
people talking about well, I'm not gonna say what they're talking about, but I think we are going to see the end of crypto as we know it.
What?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's over. And then...
Why? Because you're talking about the breakdown, or?
Well, there's going to be the crypto that's never going away. But I think all the fluff and that phase is done. And we're going to enter another phase of crypto in the market.
I think that so many major companies Visa, MasterCard, PayPal, so many other major companies have signed on enough to at least be yeah, this Bitcoin, Ethereum thing is a thing. But I think we've seen the rise in what will be the fall of the shit coins. I think that's right. Pretty safe. And just going back to we've talked about the Pluto return, I've talked about the Pluto return. It's nice to kind of reflect on this and look at it and kind of go, wow, a lot of the things that we talked about with Pluto being in a Gemini degree. I mean, the hot topics literally over the last year has been, do you need documents to travel? Is freedom of speech still a thing? Who determines what we can and cannot say and what is or is not being checked by the internet? Whether or not we're going to be reevaluating our banking system, at least here, and our federal debt and all that stuff entirely, if our debt is getting to a point where there's not much we can do about it. Have we been printing too much paper? Probably the biggest headline would just be, at least thus far in 2022, is just inflation, right? How much it costs, Pluto in the second house, to buy food, second house. What is the government doing? Are they doing anything to kind of help this? Is it being perpetuated because they subsidize farmers? Farmers would be the second house. So I have this theory that it's less about Pluto, it's more about the Saturn-Uranus squares, where it's almost in a way being set up. So we're not able to have the freedom to trade locally, buy things locally, reinforcing this dystopian future where we just all get like sucked into the metaverse and we just have our food delivered and buy everything on Amazon. And where is big business in bed with the U.S. government ensuring that tech is, basically taking over the world?
And everything Saturn is going over is what Pluto will awaken. So it is definitely more about the squares, you can say, but once again, like everything Saturn is sneak peeking is everything Pluto will awaken inevitably once it goes through Aquarius. But it's hard to say because there's a lot that's happening in front of our faces that we don't really know how to see because Neptune is unveiling it all, which is what I want to say earlier. When I was talking about crypto, what I really wanted to say was we're just going to see more of an unveiling of everything that's been happening. And I think what that looks like is more crashes and more animals dying, oddly.
That's been that's been another really, really big thing. And that's quite literal to the astrology. The Pluto conjunction in the second house, we've seen hundreds of thousands, if I'm not mistaken, of chickens because of the supposed avian flu all across farms all across America. We've seen food processing plants that have burned to the ground. I think that's more Uranus and Taurus.
But like it being in Capricorn, would you say that it's manufactured?
Yeah, for sure. So Saturn Uranus is unusual things going on in livestock or things relating to farming. Saturn is reinforcing that, saying because of the limitations or because of the shortages or issues in supply chain, I think it's being created. The gas is getting more expensive. Right. Pluto, therefore, feed gets more expensive. So it's harder for farmers to be able to afford seed and hay and other things. Yeah. So then the price of everything goes up, and then they're killing stuff off. I was listening to somebody talking about this today where they were essentially saying, like, people don't understand that we need to be able to ensure that these chickens, cows, all this livestock comes to full term so we can actually produce the product. But also we need to make sure that we're saving some of the livestock to be able to kind of regenerate. So anytime we're seeing major shortages or killing off now, that's going to affect us for 12 to 18 months down the road. Like, you think how long it takes to grow, cows and chickens and things. And I know people have sensitive beliefs about that stuff. And certainly to some extent, this is the breakdown, I think, of inhumane ways of growing food or animals for our food and consumption, and where it's become so power hungry and money driven that obviously it breaks down because it's brutal and it's not sustainable. Something that's like gotten me thinking a lot just recently, I think the last couple of weeks, has been kind of like, wow, if we look at the ratio to how many people grow our food versus consumers, I think it's somewhere between like 2 and 8%, if I remember correctly, of the population that's growing food versus consumers. And it's so easy for us to just go to the grocery store and we just buy something, and we're so quick about, throwing away scraps, not composting, like maybe not eating everything, or eating things that are heavily processed. But I feel like if we had more of a role in what we were growing and then consuming, we'd see less waste. We would see people being more conscious and aware of like what we're putting into our bodies and the work that goes into. But
which you see in countries like that too.
Farmers have been in bed with the government for ages, since FDR, when they started subsidizing and basically telling farmers, like, we're going to pay you a little bit of money to just not release all of these crops so they could manipulate and control and raise the prices. Like, this is a well-known thing.
Damn.
So I question if the Saturn-Uranus squares are more so playing out in a sense of like the government creating some of these situations that seem like shortages or fear revolving around food and resources.
So too much of a coincidence for it not to be too.
They said something like it's been every week since the beginning of the year that there has been a food processing fire, catastrophe,
that's crazy.
Something happening.
And they have to move at that pace to get to everywhere. But is it not limited to the country? Because I've heard of instances all over the world.
Well, Ukraine is like the breadbasket of Europe. So there's also lots of issues that are going to start happening with flour and grain and other shortages that are stemming from not being able to get some of those products out of the country because of war. But we're also 2 years, or 2.5 years into a pandemic where we haven't had as much production.
Yeah.
So things are catching up.
We know that Pluto and Uranus aspect Neptune. And Neptune is the, deception behind the curtain that's weaving these seemingly unrelated events together. So I think this Cancer season gives us insight into what that looks like a little bit in light of what's happened over the past 6 months. And I feel like people who have energy or planets there will be key players into disseminating that information to the rest of the society, to the rest of the collective, which could make you targets with the Pluto opposition. But I can't shake the feeling that there's a major, like from now until Virgo season, a major unveiling that, like, for people who've been following the breadcrumb, this is like a payoff. It's like everything will click and then complete Virgo season, where like it's not just developing, it's like we have definitive proof now.
Yeah.
And this could really work to, and I think it's starting this Cancer season like now.
There's a lot of stuff here that really makes me wonder. I mean, you see, one thing I like to do in sessions is like I like to take the solar return and lay it over the natal chart and vice versa, just to kind of see if there's planets that are lining up on angles or if there's conjunctions. And probably one of the things that I noticed that to me seems pretty prominent in terms of angles is we've got in this chart, Pluto is still, it's retrograding back. It's still in opposition to America's natal Mercury. So bringing up fear revolving around food, housing costs, security, insurance. We also see Saturn that is coming into, what is it? What am I looking at? Yeah, that's the square. There was something else that I just caught. Oh, the Saturn quincunx to Mercury. I also think that that's kind of suggesting like through limitations in regards to resources, trying to kind of roll back the conversation about, no, we're safe, we're good. Like hot topic headlines right now at the end of June is basically this talk about, are we going into a recession? And you see a lot of like, people affiliated with the White House coming out and basically being like, no, we're good. We're going through a transition, but we're like, nobody wants to use the word recession because they know that that's almost going to be like a death sentence. But I think that that's almost like inevitable. So that quincunx to
That
Mercury
has been coming out a lot too.
Yeah, they don't want to use that word.
And that comes back to this unveiling, because there's the perception around what's happening, and then there's that Neptunian need to distract the collective with entertainment and narratives, because we're reaching that dangerous climax, which I believe is the successive, like, Sun-Neptune oppositions every Virgo season, right? We unlayer that, and once we reach 2025, like, I feel we're in that sweet spot now that Pluto's going to Aquarius, where the collective is now seeing the deception. It's not just like a few people anymore.
And the solar return moon in Virgo is exactly conjunct Neptune, right? In opposition to transit Neptune. So the moon Neptune can be this like sensation, this situation where we're disassociating, we're drugging, we're drinking, and it's in Virgo, so it's going to be about health, it's going to be about mental health, it's going to be about addiction. And that's just more looking at the transits. You got Venus on an angle too, that's conjunct the descendant. Mercury at 0 degrees of Cancer, which is like the world axis point.
What do you feel about all the people who've been shot and killed from the last time Moon was in Aries to now in Cancer season? Do you feel like it's a trend that's going to continue in like making it a bloody summer, or is it just like, not that it's either or, right? But like, I feel like there's more to that.
The end of June, so as you guys are watching this, it's 4th of July, but knowing that Mars is going through the late degrees of Cancer, I was looking at the new moon in Cancer that we had in June, and the fact that Mars starts coming in the square with Pluto, and within about 72 hours, the moon's transit through Aries will make a square to Pluto and also to the sun in Cancer. So I touch wood, obviously, but I anticipate, as we film this, what is today, the 21st of June, I anticipate there's something else coming. There's another crisis coming in relation to that. I feel gonna throw us, because Cancer is about our roots, right?
Yeah.
So it's gonna, I think you're gonna see a whole wave of really ugly, like, arrogant nationalism.
I love that you brought up nationalism too, because that does make sense. Or even if it's not, because like a lot of the events are being spun that way.
Well, and it's
with
not
the shootings.
Yeah, but I mean, it's gonna get people like revved up to the point of being like, "Don't you want to protect your country? Give us your guns."
Sounds like a terrorist attack. Oh yeah, or a domestic terrorist attack.
Okay, so when you want to talk about being in war, right? So like some of the rules of war is like cut off power or energy supply, like dwindle food supplies, like create propaganda, create fear, like all of these things that are going on right now, and then you do something to like seem like you're the savior.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, borderline, I'm sure, at least in my own mind, like people are like, "Oh, war is coming." I'm like, "We're already here.
We're already here.
It's already happening. You're just not going to realize it until we get closer to the end of the year and we realize that it's been happening right in front of our faces."
Right. Yeah. And everything you're saying is Neptune and Pisces. This is that unveiling that I think, which I appreciate your perspective, because you having, the Pluto and the Sun Scorpio, like that's where the South Node is. So it's only people with that energy that really can unlock the wisdom of what's happening.
Yeah, but Uranus is opposed to my Sun Mercury, and like I'm getting deeper and deeper into things, and people are like, "You're a real psycho conspiracy theorist," and I'm like, "Am I though?
Right.
Is it?
Rabbit hole.
Is it gonna seem so crazy?"
And then you got the Saturn square too.
Yeah.
So that's like literally blocking you.
Yeah.
Damn.
The Saturn. Well, I mean, the first Saturn square my Sun, it just made me really tired. But now that Saturn's retrograding back with the South Node, I'm like, I'm ready to just like give up and be like, "Okay, universe, just do whatever you want with me. I'm ready to be done being raked through the coals." But
right before the breakthrough too.
right before the breakthrough, yeah. Welcome to the Uranus opposed Sun transit. I know that. I mean, I think that in a lot of ways, what's going on is going to bring. We've seen this in solstice, right? We looked at the solstice chart, like the Moon Jupiter square, where people are instinctually becoming very aggressive or they're becoming very protective. And I think that's the ugly side of American culture, unfortunately, is like, don't you want to protect your home? Don't you want to protect your family? Like, we've been sold the American dream since the 1940s going into 50s. That's like, buy a house, have a family, do all these things. It's going to give you security. And people have been reaching for that for the last 70 years or so. And now we've hit a point where it's like, we've subscribed to all of the mortgages, the car loans, the college education, all the shit. And people are in a mountain of debt, thinking that they needed these things to be secure, but when shit hits the fan, people aren't going to know how to get energy. They're not going to know how to grow their own food. They're not going to know how to be self-sufficient. So they've almost positioned individuals in a perfect place to be dependent on the government. Damn. Right?
What will happen if China declared war on the U.S. right now?
They already are. We just don't know it.
I believe that.
They already are. I mean, one of the biggest things, and I was talking about this with somebody recently, and I don't understand why this is not a concern, but a mass amount of our pharmaceuticals come from China. Is that not a concern?
Well, I think more than just pharmaceuticals, too.
Well, obviously, we're heavily dependent. I mean, the reality of the situation is this. World powers are changing. The U.S. is clearly not going to continue to be on top.
How many Chinatowns are in America, too? They already here.
Are you thinking about noodles? You're thinking about noodles right now.
Like what would happen? Like, would they just be like, "No, I side with America"? Bro, they're already here. It'd just be like, and it's a wrap.
Well, they're already kind of. It's weird because I've been listening about how like Russia's kind of working with certain countries in like South America right now, and they're calling it like humanitarianism, and that they're going in, but really they're training civilians or something in South America, and then like China's positioning themselves in the Bahamas. And
was thinking that
also, like,
too,
they're
like-
wanting to come from Taiwan. I'm like,
If South America
there's so
declared
many,
war,
there's so many land grabs
y'all out here
coming.
too, you know what
The
I'm
Mars
saying? Like,
Uranus conjunction in Taurus is straight up fucking land grabs. People are gonna be like,
Oh,
nope,
yeah.
this is ours now.
overnight. No, but I love that you presented that because a lot of it is very subliminal. It's very like blend in and then, whoosh, you know what I mean? So I was just saying that because what I brought up about like if China declared war applies to South America, applies to Russia, you know what I mean? Just the whole notion that things are not at all as they seem.
It's like a James Bond movie.
Things can literally switch just like
right? It's like all the bad guys are lining up.
that. Just like that. Yeah.
And what's so infuriating is like, at least nowadays, like I feel like we're not properly educating children about American history, and we're not talking about global history the way that we could or we should. But when I see like this shit going on with like Russia and like, you know, like North Korea and like fucking China, I'm like, oh, it's like it's literally like Mussolini, Stalin, and like fucking
Yeah,
Hitler. Like
happening right now.
Does nobody see the connection here? The
In
fact
the
that
face.
it
Yeah.
started with people being like uber like all about like nationalism and like protecting their country, and then they were like, oh, like let us influence your healthcare. Now give us your guns. Okay, then all of a sudden we have concentration camps. Like history repeats itself.
It really does. And I really do believe, especially square Mars, you know, that whole notion to de-arm, or rather introduce that rhetoric, like, hey, we don't really need, because there is
really
both
think
ways
that they're
you can
gonna
look at
pry
something.
guns out of Americans' hands?
Well,
You
they're-
don't think that it's the second that starts happening? I mean,
that's going to be why there's civil war in this country.
buried
There is.
deep in the legislation that they are trying to pass in regards to gun laws specifically talks about unless you have a license, then you cannot legally dismember, take apart, clean, and put together your guns. So it's like a loophole. It's like, okay, well, not everybody who has a gun is like licensed. Like you can go and get a gun, but like to have a concealed weapon is different. I don't know. I don't have a gun,
Right, concealed carry.
but something about that is like if you can't take your gun apart, clean it, maintain it, and like repack it, I guess that's what you would call it. I don't know. Reload it. And that's illegal. And they're also making decisions to deem whether or not you're mentally capable of having a gun, which will be decided by the government. What the fuck is going on? Like, Second Amendment says specifically, these rights shall not be infringed. But I get what people are saying. We don't need necessarily to have, like, automatic rifles. I think there should be more work revolving around keeping it safe. But, and I'm going to sound like an asshole saying this, but I have a strong feeling from what I've seen that a lot of the situations going on, unfortunately, even though people have lost their lives, with some of these attacks in schools have been staged. They have been created. We have seen this
There's a reason why you had to apologize before you say that. It's kind of obvious, right?
It's sad though, because
But
we think of like Columbine, Sandy Hook, all these things. Like this has been building since the 90s. But when you really go and look at the footage and you see some of the faces, like they cycle some of the content through, some of the videos, some of the people there.
And then when you look at the aftermath, no one knows what really happened. Like,
Well, they're
there's
still investigating this stuff in regards
Right.
to the recent Texas shooting and the fact that they were telling people to stand down. And
It's just
I mean,
really
it's
weird.
just
No, but there's a reason why you're hesitant to say the obvious because of how the narratives are set. Like, how dare you try and...
it's the
you know
same
what I
thing
mean?
about the V word. I mean, we've
Right.
essentially the last several years, because of the squares that we've seen between the nodes and Neptune and a lot of other things, false narratives have created a sense of division. That division has put pressure on people socially to where if you're not following the narrative, then you're cast out and you're cast
Which
aside.
you have to look back to 60 and 91 and 93 because this is just a repeat of those
Yeah.
30 years ago. We're just reinforcing new narratives, and it's important to kind of like at least not even if we don't like say it's what happened, to at least open it up as a possibility, because you know at the end of the day no one really knows what is really
No, and like here's the
happening.
thing: is like I say this, I don't talk about a lot of this stuff on my channel. I try to keep it really neutral and like PG. Like I don't want to like instigate fear, but I genuinely feel like if you were to go back 2 or 3 years ago with some of the stuff conspiracy theorists were saying about the fact that there was going to be forced Vs, that there was going to be a social system, that there was going to be digital passports, that it was going to be tied to finances, and now you start to see what's going on,
unveiling,
right?
Yeah.
And in my mind, I'm like, it all makes perfect sense. I've recently had this aha moment that was like, tech is growing so quickly, and we're moving to such a technological jump here soon that, of course, they wanted to get rid of all of the bullshit jobs. They wanted everybody at home sucked in and tuned into IT and apps and all kinds of other things, getting acclimated and used to being able to work in a digital interface, because where we're going, probably a mass amount of the future job positions, especially in hospitality, the service industry, is all going to be by robots and AI.
You know the main reason they get away with it? Music, sports, all in entertainment.
There's like a...
It's so entertaining.
There's like a... I want to... Not metaverse, but there's some like meta movie coming out soon. And there's speculation. People have been talking about being like, well, of course, they're basically grooming the public to like become like into the fact that we're going to have this reality where we do everything in the meta, and then like we have our life, but we become used to being in the meta because it's so fun and easy to be like, here's my sneakers, here's my job, here's my icon, this is what I look like. But then we live in like these shithole apartments with horrible conditions. So we want to have this false reality, right? We want to be tuned into that. And I think the moon Neptune speaks to that. They're speculating by 2024, 2025 that I think they said it was going to be like, what did they say? I sent it to you. It was like a large number of the population, I don't remember the specific, but a large number of the population they were assuming would spend at least 1 hour a day in the metaverse, whether they were shopping, interacting, working, whatever. I mean, that's pretty significant. I think they said a sixth of the world's population.
Damn.
So clearly there's this push to go more in that direction, and the government knows there's going to be money in tech, right? Maybe that's why they're like saying, fuck it, let's get out of farming, let's get out of these other things. And recently, if you guys saw the news, all that stuff about those cows that died, I think it was in Kansas, I think?
Midwest.
There was recently something passed by the FDA speculating that they were given the green light to go in and edit the gene sequences for cattle. Wow. So if that's what's going to happen, obviously they're going to go and be creating lab-grown meat or doing other things. So it's like there's this fusion between the government and tech, probably because they see the innovations and things that are going on. And I will go as far as saying that I personally believe the next Pluto retrograde, because it's real close. I mean,
wait, aren't we in? Okay, you mean after this?
The next, I guess, the next conjunction.
That's going to be coming out of Aquarius. Oh,
yeah.
Pluto
So when it's retrograde during our birthday, but when it conjuncts exactly again, it'll be around July 11th, and then we're going to see the sun come into an opposition with Pluto around that full moon in Capricorn, around the 14th. And then the sun will oppose Pluto, and I think everybody's going to find out that there's news getting ready to break that the U.S. is going to realize that we need to issue a digital dollar. And I'm not talking about stable coin, I'm not talking about anything. I'm talking about going towards a cashless society. And I think we're going to see that sometime right around this time that the moon comes into the square.
And you don't miss, which has me kind of like, oh shit. Because it is in the 8th house too, and the 8th house is other people's money and like taxes and like...
Yeah, there's more tax stuff that's coming. And especially once they start to realize like how much money is in crypto in the digital space. And like, I don't know, man. There is some real...
So another thing we have to keep in mind, America's birthday is going to bring in the new era of and wave of entertainment. And we really need to follow the entertainment. Because like Candace was saying, like this is going to be where they embed the narratives. Like what are your favorite artists? What are your favorite producers, directors? What message are they wanting you to make popular? They broadcast it to you because it's you who, with your spending power, makes it popular. Okay, not Ice Cube.
Unless you're Ice Cube.
Ice Cube. Shout out to Ice Cube. Shout out to motherfucking Ice Cube.
Because he's like, fuck this. I like that. maybe
And
it's
y'all
just,
try to crucify him because he was trying to do what's right for people. Like, I don't understand that.
but he's not the only one. There's been also police officers, there's been nurses, there's been people in the military. I mean, I've been watching things where
teachers,
lines
doctors.
of people are getting discharged from the armed forces because
Censored.
they're refusing, and you're not hearing
You're
about
not hearing
that.
about it, right?
Yeah.
You're not hearing about
That's
it.
why
You're
the
not
pilots were
hearing
doing
about
what they were doing.
it. Right. Oh.
You know? It's and that's what I love. I fucking love astrology so much. We were talking about this in the Venus retrograde at the end of last year. I was like, watch everybody who's in uniform. And that's when that started.
You did. Yup, she did.
Yeah.
She said that. Yeah.
I mean, it's just...
it's that silent majority, which, touching on what you said, is so important because a lot of what's happening, we're not really going to hear. And I feel like that's the Uranus fourth house to Saturn, that revolution being hidden in the fourth. Like, it being more grounded, and it's not broadcast. Like, a false narrative is being pushed at the same time revolutionary shit is happening with individuals, you know?
What do you make of Lilith's conjunction to the sun? But, you know, we're going to see Lilith come into conjunction with America's sun.
That looks to me like people in drag performing the children. And yeah, you know,
I would rather leave my kid with a drag queen than with a lot of other things.
I mean,
That's all I'm gonna say. Without a lot of other groups.
I feel like straight people and homosexual people and trans people are all trash. I feel like no one's better than the other. And
I saw recently a video where they
so-
were educating the Navy how to use pronouns.
Oh my God.
And I was like, is this real? Not that I'm against pronouns. I don't
But
care.
the
I'm very
Navy?
confused by the pronouns. I get the he, she, them. Like, I understand that. They, like, whatever. But I was like, why would the Navy be teaching this? This is strange.
But no, I feel like with Lilith, like, it's a revisiting of all these taboo, like, provocative, because it's squaring Jupiter. So it's bringing all that to a head where we're dealing with situations where it's like, how serious is this? You know what I mean? Like, for all the rhetoric around it, now we're in a life and death situation. How serious is this? You know, how and I think we're gonna see more of a turning point. Like, a lot of people feel like the Johnny Depp Amber Heard case was kind of bringing an end to this, like, Me Too facet. I don't see it like that, but I see how that can kind of be.
I think it's going to be a war on women.
I think it is. I think that's been the prelude, but this could actually be the official start.
Or you could see, like, a really famous
womanhood.
woman or a wife become, like, seen as a villain. We could see that. You know, we could see that. Or a fear of, like, female, you know, power or energy. I mean, I think it's been really interesting to see Lilith go through Cancer recently.
It'd definitely be another phase. Because it can't, I would see it as maybe like a reintroduction to that war. Because it has been subtle. Like, that whole, what is womanhood? Who is allowed to be a woman?
It's in a really strong square to Jupiter, too. So, yeah, who identifies as female? What does it mean to identify? What does your identity have to do with, like, your physical gender?
Are you a vagina-carrying woman or a penis-carrying woman, basically? You know. And apparently me saying that is insensitive. I didn't know that. I thought it was just the truth. So, like, this coming out ahead can be very messy in the best of ways.
To me, it makes sense going into the Pluto and Aquarius transit next year. I feel like in the future, we may see a future where people are not assigned gender at birth. I'm not going to go into that. That's my feeling that what's coming, just with the fact that they're putting so much emphasis into some of this stuff, which I understand everybody's entitled to identify how they identify, but I think with Lilith crossing over that sun, it's also going to bring up the theme of, like, you know, are feminists becoming enraged, getting angry? Are we getting reactionary because of, you know, whether or not we feel safe in our homes? I also have a feeling that it's going to still deal a lot with, like, abortion and women's rights and things in relation to their bodies. And it's strange with the North Node being in Taurus, because the North Node in Taurus is about fertility. It is about physically having children. So it's kind of contradicting with, like, the Jupiter square. Lilith is, like, villainizing women for wanting to have the right to choose if they want to have an abortion. And the way that women are acting out very violently or darkly with the conjunction to Lilith. And And there is more coming. We are going to see more of this next year. And I guess the one thing that I would say is that it doesn't matter if they're coming for women's rights. It doesn't matter if they're coming for gay or trans rights. It doesn't matter if they're coming for minorities. They will not stop at that. They will go for those people who are a little bit more predisposed to being taken advantage of and taking their rights away from. But the people who are like, I'm white, I'm heterosexual, I'm a Republican, or I'm a Democrat, or I donate, like, you're next on the chopping block. So if you're watching this stuff go on, if you're allowing this stuff to happen, it's going to materialize next year when Jupiter comes into conjunction with Chiron and we start to see Jupiter square Pluto, that it is only the very beginning of them starting to take away from rights of all individuals, not just select groups of people.
But you can also say that it's already been done since 2020, and now we're seeing the effect of it because everything is shifted coming into Aries, Jupiter in Aries, Taurus, and Gemini, and I can't help but feel or think that everything that we're talking about is just camouflage. It's just like, it's really just fake, and the major conflict is just gonna take over. It's almost like we had to deliberately be distracted with what is going on. And now that they're done, especially with Mars getting ready to join the party.
There's just, I mean, when we saw it happen when what entered 0 degrees of Taurus the day of the Capitol riots?
Mars.
Oh, it was Mars. Okay.
It was Mars,
And
yeah.
you see that photo of like that fucking hillbilly with like the horns and just running through the Capitol, and
This is actually why
Yeah.
I don't believe in sidereal. This is like one of the evidence I know that tropical is legit, because if it was sidereal, Mars would be like 7 degrees Aries.
Well, and Mars is sextile Mercury. This is a Mercury rule chart. This is the solar return. So the birthday is actually on the 5th. But
Yeah.
to see like Mercury on the ascendant in a world access point, getting people to act hysterically and very emotionally, that's sextile to Mars, and it's in regards to like their political affiliation.
And staged.
And it's a grand mutable cross. You see the moon in Virgo in the 4th, opposed Neptune in the 10th, square the nodes. I mean, things are changing, and I guess perhaps maybe.
But are you aware that it's changing?
Yeah.
Are you distracted by whatever narrative they're pushing in your face? Because it's so like obvious now. It's like a production.
I think the U.S. is going to do something very dramatic. Looking at the moon being the ruler of the second house, they're going to do something very dramatic. Like they might start banning foreigners from being able to buy property.
Damn.
Because that's land. It's in opposition to Neptune. They may also start stripping the rights in regards to what you can or cannot produce on your land, what you can own, and just the fact that, the North Node Uranus conjunction is insinuating that they're going to put forth some kind of legislation or something legally as a result of feeling like they're financially under attack. Like if the U.S. dollar tanks any further and it loses its power in terms of the global markets and trade, they may try to protect themselves by saying, we have a U.S. digital dollar. This is what we work with. So that way they can manipulate and kind of control and not be offset by other markets. And so, I mean, it's going to be some wild times ahead.
That to me feels like Saturn, Uranus, Gemini when it's like complete.
Yeah, maybe by then, you're issued some kind of like, federal wallet or something, I mean, you're going to have something like that. We might have not a need for physical wallets anymore in general. Your wallet will be in your phone, Uranus
credit card
and Gemini.
number. Apparently you can also use that already.
What?
Social Security money. Like your number is like your credit card number, your check number.
You can use it?
Apparently.
You can't spend it though.
Kinda. I mean, not really, but yeah, it's weird.
So you say that like it's gonna be there
It's
when
discharged.
we're fucking 65. Are you kidding me?
No, not that. Not the Social Security.
I was gonna say.
No. But see, that I don't even think we'll have that by the time we're 65.
No, but we're still paying into it nevertheless.
Damn.
So
That's crazy.
better pay those lotto numbers. It's I mean, a sun on the ascendant, solar return chart. I mean, it's basically we're gonna be in the news. You're gonna see that because there's a flip flop. Usually, America's a Sag rising, and then we have the Gemini rising.
Yeah.
So, I'm really looking at the North Node rulership, Uranus,
what country's
North
gonna
Node.
declare war on us?
I feel like there's going to be some support or funding that might come from the UK. Like, I keep in the back of my mind thinking, wouldn't that be a fucked plot twist if the Queen's like, come on home?
Yeah.
You know, like, what if that happened? Because Gemini deals with London, but there's other cities. Chicago might be a real emphasis as well because that's, I think, got connections.
Like, we'll give you
also.
support, but you have to return back you have to pay us taxes again? That would be fucking crazy. If a Pluto returned later, we're paying taxes back to the Queen. Like, got you, motherfuckers.
Can you imagine?
That'd be so ironic.
I mean, a return of any planet
so
is just a returning to where it was,
shit.
and there is like some karmic thing that happens with the return.
Like a reversal?
Yeah, but Pluto is basically like you're going to pay the cost for all the deeds that you've done. So it's like, you know,
Damn.
Pluto in the second house for America is like where we've bled everybody else dry financially, and now it's like it's flipped on its side. I just oh boy.
Right.
I look at this and I'm like, I'm very curious not what happens around the 4th of July. I'm very curious what is going to happen from December through March of 2023 because I look at the ace through the midheaven and that's going to be
That's like a sweeping, like
yeah.
everything, like it's definitively the end of an old chapter, and we're moving into the next wave, and it's just like the most extreme. And to me, that looks exactly like the beginning of the end of the world. Saturn is the world, and it's at the end of the zodiac cycle, but it's beginning that cycle, so it's the beginning of the end. It's like, wow. And then Pluto goes into Aqua. Like, that's just going to be neo-terrorism. And I don't think it's going to be as scary as that looks like to us. It could be liberating for you. So we'll see.
We'll have to see what happens. Definitely we'll come back. Like, we'll do another video probably talking about when we have the next, once Pluto goes direct and we're seeing the next return. Because really, things get quite active in the new year. But hopefully you guys are enjoying this while you're drinking your Budweiser and you're eating your hot dogs. Lots to talk about around the table with the fireworks and the cherry pie.
Shit.
Let us know, what do you think? What do you see in the transits that we're not seeing? What do you anticipate for the year ahead? Let us know. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you guys always for your support. Please consider joining our memberships. You guys make it possible with your donations, your comments, and joining our live show to keep this podcast going. We are hoping to get to podcast number 100 pretty soon. We're still a little bit out, but we're glad to be here and to be drinking on the internet. And
Season 2.
talking to you guys all about the cosmos. So happy 4th of July. Enjoy your barbecues. Take care.